Well, I hope your food plots are doing great right now. You know, we're in August, and a lot of people's hunting dreams, the work on their property, all that they do, what they spend their extra money on, has to do with food plotting, even if you don't own the land. It's a big project for a lot of people. And you can see we have big, beautiful food plot here. We have fall power green mix over here, brassica up there, and then a rut zone mix up there. So we have the big three because it's a big food plot. It's about 2 acres. However, even we have fails we have to deal with. And a lot of these are, you know, what you're trying to interpret and figure out a prescription for success and a remedy for that failure on the run. And I want to show this has been a beautiful plot of clover for the last 2 to 3 years. And we've really enjoyed it. I did not like the percentage of weeds that were starting to creep in. And so we assessed that about 2 weeks ago. It was actually July 16th. We're on August 4th right now. And I wanted to fix that. You know, we have food out there. We're not depending on this, but the deer love to travel through here. We have a camera right over here. We still see a lot of deer moving through this to get to that stuff out there. This is one of our favorite spots to hunt spring turkeys. We put a pop-up right over there. In fact, my son-in-law, Joe, his hunt was like 30 minutes long the one year, and he shot his turkey. They love that clover in the spring, and this represents a great pass-through for deer to come through here, go through our buckwheat that's out there, and head to the distant ag fields. So we get to see a lot of bucks too during the summertime. We especially get to see a lot of bucks when it gets into the velvet coming off. We've had some outstanding bachelor groups. 2 years ago, we had some great footage of LO beams in here. I want to say, what was Shorty, the 10 point. Yeah, there's a bunch of good bucks here in that bachelor group with the camera right over there. Regardless, though, the weeds are one reason that your food plots fail. You always have to take care of the weeds before they take control. And you can see right here, we smoked this plot out, including the clover, on July. Like I said, it was July 16th of this year. It's August 4th. Look at the weeds that are already starting to come back in. The weeds are an ever-invading army. And if you think that you're going to plant into smartweed or lamb's quarters or pigweed, and that you're going to have a great crop, and you just say, well, here's the nutritional value of pigweed or lamb's quarter or smartweed. Folks, they don't eat it during the fall. They don't eat any of that during the fall. And even if they do eat it during the summer, it's everywhere. So it's no good. So having weeds that take over, and if you think you're going to get a viable crop throwing seed into something like this where you have a lot of weeds coming in, you're wrong. And so when you have a thick base of clover and weeds, it's choking out growth underneath. You kill off that top layer, you need to kill the second layer. So we're actually, next week, we're going to come in here. I'm going to reseed this. I'm going to spray it at the same time with Liberty, and we'll smoke this down, get rid of it, and then we're planting a mix that has our perennial blend as a base. We're going to go our Fall Power 365. 365 refers to our perennial base. We engineer the top greens to be attractive for this fall, and then you're left with clover for next year and beyond. Even if we use this clover field for 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, whatever we manage, we have to start with it being weed free, and that's why we just looked at it and started over. Now, if you're looking at your plots right now and you have more weeds than seed and weed than growth coming in, consider smoking it out. And when you have enough thatch like this, you can see what's happened in 3 weeks. We have a lot of soil exposed. But at first, when we went in here and killed this is a mat of green. If we tried to put seed through that at that time, not only would it have been choked out by the mat of seeds, some would have germinated, but look at what we're still competing with because they have so many weeds. So I recommend 2 sprayings. We're going to spray those about a month apart. That'll allow this to grow. I want these weeds to actually come even heavier. They're not going to go to seed head. You know, some of these weeds, lamb quarters, I was reading, the seeds are viable in the ground for up to 12 years. Something like ragweeds, I think only 3 years. So there's a difference with all these weeds. The bottom line is there's a seed bank in here, and we want to take care of it twice and take that out. Now, you might have food plots that have failed because of drought or looking sparse. What happens when you plant seeds in mid-July, 3rd week of July, and 2 weeks later, you haven't had much growth, there's not much there, then the plants are going to be unhealthy that do come in because you haven't had rain yet, and maybe you had enough to germinate and then you haven't had any for 2 weeks. So you really have to start looking at it that, you know, for us, the perfect window of brassica is around August 1st. When you get into middle of August, you're starting to get on the late window, and by the 3rd and 4th week of August, you're really almost too late for brassica around our area in southeast Minnesota. So I'm not going to consider putting brassica out in a crop, but what I'm going to do is, let's say I have total plot failure, I'm going to assess the amount of weeds I have. I'm going to spray and plant the same day. If it's more in my back end window and I have rain in the forecast, then maybe I'll go with brassica if I'm trying to remedy a brassica plot. But if not, I'm going to go with something more of a green blend. Might put a little bit of brassica in there, but I want a green blend, maybe something that has early season buckwheat for them to eat. Tillage radish are the fastest growing radish, so maybe I'd want just tillage radish instead of a whole brassica complement and blend. They're the fastest growing. You have a shorter window, so tillage radish is appropriate for that. Maybe I want some peas if I can work them into the soil a little bit. Maybe some annual clover, because that'll get up to 8-10 inches tall still. And then I might plan on coming in, and in the case of this, we're going to establish that perennial. I'm going to come in here in mid-September, about a month after, and I'm going to flood this with about 150 pounds of rye, which we'll take care of next spring. So we take that out and we're left with the pure perennial. Let's say you do have that weed problem. You're better off saying, man, I have terrible weeds. It's August 10th, it's August 14th. I'm not going to have any viable food plot. Kill the weeds and wait till mid-September. In our case, in mid-September, I'd still plant a buckwheat because it's not going to frost traditionally for about 5 weeks from that mid-September time frame. I'd get that buckwheat up about 2 feet. Deer love it when it's young like that. It'd cover my early season. I'd plant some peas at that time of year. They're pretty fast growing. Our peas that are 5 weeks old are already about this tall right now and getting a lot of growth. And then, of course, tillage radish is appropriate. I might even add at that time 50 pounds to 75 pounds of rye per acre, because I'm trying to fill in that volume, and then I might look at adding rye more in October. You really have to look at right now your forecasting on your plots. What do I need to do? You can't just take it at face value that the plot's full of weeds. You're going to come in, even if you drill something, and you have to compete with those weeds. Drought is always rearing its ugly head. There's lots of reasons. Maybe it's overbrowsed. Maybe you have no weeds in your plot, but you're looking at it right now in August and you're saying, man, I have small fall food plots, and these are getting hammered right now. The crop's only getting about 4 inches high. I can't even imagine getting higher because the deer are hitting it so hard. Start looking at, if you're in this upper Midwest area like us, start looking at 3rd to 4th week of August, maybe add 100 pounds of rye over the top of it, with the full intention of about 3 weeks later adding another 100 pounds. What that rye will do is it'll come up, it's young and tender. They love it when it's young and tender. So let's say you're planting that Labor Day or mid-September. You're getting that into the soil. It's taking browse pressure off the existing forage. Maybe it was a brassica crop. Maybe it was a fall green crop. Maybe it was our fall power greens, whatever it might be. But it's coming in, and you're adding that rye layer over that. That'll start to take, and what I did back, this is going back a long ways, is I would have brassica that was eaten down in the UP in Michigan. It's probably, you go on vacation, you come back, and instead of it being 2 feet, it was 8 inches. Instead of it being 2 feet, it's now 6 inches. It's going the wrong way. And so I added a lot of rye over it to the end of August. And what I found was really interesting is that I actually started to experience growth on the brassica because the deer turned the attention to that nice young crop of rye that was coming in. And I actually got some growth on the brassica, and it really taught me about layering. That was about 25 years ago. And you really look at that and say, man, this is a really viable option. And so let's say your plot's fairly weed free. You're intending crops being overbrowsed. You come in here and you add that rye to it. Plan on adding another rye so you get another fresh, young, tender. Maybe it's thick enough in middle of October, early October, you don't need to add that 3rd layer of 100 pounds of rye. And why rye? Because it'll grow in the coldest temperatures, the poorest soil, and the toughest grazing conditions, has the most volume as a push and as a plant growth compared to even wheat or oats. Oats, you always consider the later you get into the fall, the less it's going to grow because they're not frost tolerant or freeze tolerant. Even the cold hardy, we sell cold hardy tundra oats, and they even have their limits. I'd say like in northern Minnesota, Wisconsin, they're going to be turning brown by the end of November traditionally, and I've used all the cold hardy oats, and that's what happens. In your location, if you're in central Illinois, maybe those oats will stay green in through the end of December, middle of December, but they all have their window where they turn brown until you get into Kentucky, West Virginia, areas that experience little to no frost all season long. So there's 3 remedies that you can have for whether it's overbrowsing, drought, or just plain weed infestation. Each one of them is bad, and maybe you have all of them combined. But bottom line is, August is the time where you look at it and make critical decisions on what you need to do to make sure you have a really beautiful, weed-free, clean crop going into the season, because weeds, they always grow. Doesn't matter if it's drought, deer browsing. You know why they grow when there's deer browsing the heck out of your plot? It's because the deer don't want them. Doesn't matter what kind they are. They don't really care if there's scattered ragweed out here. The ragweed doesn't have a sign to the deer that says, I'm 26% protein, eat me. They do it by taste, volume, and they just don't want it. So make sure you have clean plots, and there's a lot of remedies still going in through August. We're using this remedy right here, and you can bet every one of these weeds will be brown. It's Monday today on August 4th. And I would say by the 15th of August, every one of these weeds will be brown, and we'll have nice little combinations of about 10, 12 different seeds. Half of those slanted towards our cool season cover crop that'll attract deer this year, and half of those establishing that clover plot for next year. And we're still in time to have a nice clover field going into spring turkey, so that we can monitor not only our deer going back and forth through the spot, out through the buckwheat potentially next year and into the ag fields, but also our turkey and poult. We just had some poult over here the other day, Dylan. We got a video of that out on this. It was yesterday. And we're seeing those all over the property. But anyways, I want you to check it out. And if you have any questions, make sure you check out the phone number. You can call, leave us a voicemail so that we can use it on our weekly podcast discussing all things whitetail strategy with you, the viewer. Thank you.